Hi, this is Rhys Atkinson at Eclipse Golf. This is our featured fitting of the week with Neil Burke, owner of Horsham Golf and Fitness and PGA Pro. Neil's objective for this session was to have a good look at his current golf clubs, see how they're performing, check the specs were appropriate for him, or see if any changes could be made to improve performance, and also to look at some of the other brands' models in an appropriate spec to see if an edge could be found. So with that in mind, we measured Neil's current irons. So the 7-iron in his Mizuno MP32s, which is quite a blade-like iron, was 37 inches in terms of length, which is pretty standard. Sorry, 37 and a quarter. The shaft was the FCM Rifle 5.5, which we popped onto the frequency machine and it profiled as a mid-stiff flex. Swing weight was D2.5, which is slightly on the heavy side. The shaft itself is well over 120 grams, so that would have been one of the reasons for that swing weight. The loft was 35 degrees in the 7-iron, which is relatively weak by today's standards, which would be, for a blade-style club, probably more towards 34. So a degree of loft can make quite a big difference in terms of launch and spin and the resulting flight and distance and performance in all conditions. Lie angle was 62.5 degrees, so just hedging towards the upright side for a 7-iron. So with all that in mind, we then started to hit a few shots. With Neil's current irons, you can see the white lip circle here were the Mizunos, and you can see actually in relation to some of the other clubs that we hit subsequently that the resulting dispersion was a little bit wider. So we were quite keen to address that. And looking at Neil's club head speed, we can see here mid-80s in terms of club head speed for a 7-iron, very healthy. One of Neil's questions, even before we started hitting shots, was whether he needed to start considering things like graphite to reduce the weight and pick up some speed and maybe some distance. Not that distance was something he felt he was losing, but just to see whether that would help at all. Certainly, having looked at the speed, I mean, anything between 80 and 90 miles an hour, you would naturally start to think something in the stiff flex range, and then couple that with the player's swing style and tempo and how they load the shaft. So in Neil's case, smooth mid-tempo, I would say, loaded the shaft nicely but not overly aggressively. Certainly nothing there that indicated to me graphite would be required to help extra speed or improve shots. And you also want to keep the weight at a nice balance as well, so you don't lose control. Having said that, knowing that Neil's current shaft was well over 120 grams, I felt that may be a little bit excessive. So really felt that something more in the range of 100 to 110 grams would be a more appropriate shaft weight. So we looked at, or a couple of shafts that sprung to mind, maybe the Modus M3 Tour 105S, or perhaps something like the KBS Tour V 110S would be appropriate models to look at for the weight range. We also looked at the models that we might try. So obviously Neil has quite a blade style club, quite classic looking, thin top line, relatively small face profile, not too much offset, relatively thin sole. Neil likes the classic look, but certainly isn't averse to try something a little bigger, perhaps with a few more safety net features, which typically come with faster ball speeds as well off the face. So if it helps performance and doesn't detract from anything else he might be trying to do, then certainly wasn't averse to trying some different models out. With that in mind, the models we picked out, there were others, including Yonex, TaylorMade as well. But these are the models we ended up focusing on. So you had the Callaway Apex Pro, the Ping Blade, and the two Strixon clubs, the 765. Sorry, there's a mistype on that section there, so ignore that. 765 and the 565. They were both in 6-irons, so a slight difference in the distance results, which you could see on the left-hand side. But the most noticeable thing, I think, was, like, for example, when you looked at the Callaway and the Ping dispersion numbers, you see the green and the yellow in the middle of the section here. You can see how much tighter the dispersion is and a slight pickup on average distance compared to Neil's current irons. Some of that will be because of the loft. They'll be a little bit stronger. But the weight of both those shafts was much lighter. The Callaway was actually a sub-100 gram shaft, but felt a little bit too light to Neil, even though the results were very, very good. And the Ping, which is the green dispersion, the Ping Blade was the Modus 105 stiff, which felt really good to Neil. It's a nice smooth profile, 105 grams in terms of weight, more or less. And we could see the dispersion circle was much, much tighter. And then as an aside to that, we then tried something a little bit heavier again in the 765 in the blue dispersion results here, we can see that going back up towards 120 gram shaft, the dispersion results straight away went back more reflective of the results that Neil had with the Mizunos, with the heavy shaft there. So it definitely seemed to be a link. Certainly Neil felt it, an improvement in the feel, and over a period of time, 18 holes of golf, all the extra grams of weight can make quite a big difference in terms of the overall score. Other indicating factors that kind of kept us sort of told us that we were on the right track here. We see the smash factor up the top here. We can see that the numbers were improving from Neil's original on the 127, went up to 128, up to 133. And that's just telling us that you're getting a more efficient collision. You're transferring more of the energy from your swing into the ball more effectively. Doesn't always mean a good shot. It certainly means you're connecting well. Some of that, once again, there's a number of different things that can influence that, including the loft of the golf club, which is part of it. But all in all, moving in the right direction. The 6-irons and the Strixons were very good. They would naturally be a slightly higher efficiency because of the lower loft. But certainly the 565 looked excellent and really, really felt good as well. Also, the launch and the spin, how the ball flies, there'll be an optimum in terms of how high you start the ball in terms of the launch and how much spin is on the ball. So depending on your ball speed, those numbers might fluctuate a little bit. Certainly in Neil's case, looking between sort of 19 and 20 degrees of launch would be appropriate. If we could have got it under 7,000 in spin, that would have been even better. In his case, though, we went from 7.8 down to 7.7, down to 7.6. So definitely moving in the right direction. Once again, lower spin on the 6-irons because of the loft as a natural consequence. But all in all, moving in the right direction. Actual height of the shot was pretty good all the way through. So with regards to like the static measurements that we took from Neil at the start, height and wrist to floor, the suggestion was that something slightly shorter might be appropriate. But Neil's been using this specification, this relatively standard in terms of spec, all his career and successfully so. So there was no real immediate rush to try and change that. But we may consider, Neil's preferred set range of clubs, or set makeup, if you like, was 4-iron down to wedge, and then something like a 50 or 51 degree and a 58 degree. So perhaps towards the 4-iron and 5-iron, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that goes. It may be something that's slightly shorter, might feel more comfortable if you're not getting maximum performance out of it. But also the lie angle dynamically tested, there was definitely a grinding, or the heel was contacting the ground through impact a little more than it should do. Once again, shape-wise, Neil, nice, high, soft draw, quite a bit of shape, but once again, Neil was used to it. So it's something we take into consideration. We don't necessarily need to change it off the bat, but I would think a little bit flatter might be appropriate, but that'd be something we test during the off-season to see how it goes once he has the new irons. These things can be adjusted anyway. But ultimately, the end result there, the 565s at those specs, grip-wise, relatively small hands there. So Neil's grip size, we went for an M60 mouth size, which is slightly smaller in terms of thickness than the M58. One layer of tape with the Modus 3 Tor 105S shaft. Everything worked really well, and Neil loved the look. It was slightly fresh, a little bit different from what he used to. Great sound and feel off the club itself, and some super results in terms of making improvements in terms of ball flight, distance, and certainly the dispersion levels. And the one other noticeable spec, which was different from Neil's current ones, was the swing weight. It was more like D0, D1. So all of these things have quite a big impact and need to be considered during fitting. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting these irons and trying them out and seeing how they go. Hopefully you found that useful and interesting. If you have any questions or think we might be able to help you, you can contact us on the website eclipse-golf.co.uk or call us on 01293 223 038. In the meantime, enjoy your golf, and we'll be back with another featured fitting in the next edition of the newsletter. Thanks for listening.